Hi, my name is Rebekah Ingram, and I'm a research associate at Carleton University's Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I'm happy to tell you today about one of the projects that my colleagues and I are working on. The Canadian Consortium for Arctic Data Interoperability, which we call CCADI, is in the process of developing a research data infrastructure that will facilitate information discovery, promote the sharing of standards, and enable interoperability among existing Arctic data infrastructures at universities and institutions across Canada. The Arctic Institute of North America is one of the leads with several of the other partners here, and Carleton GCRC co-leads the technical team. One of the main goals of this project is interoperability, having the different systems used by all of the different organizations be able to connect, share, and exchange information with one another. In order to do this, we need to make sure that we're all using either the same terminology or at least that we're able to translate that terminology. Given that the semantic domains cover numerous natural science domains, such as climate and forecasting, cryosphere, and oceanography, as well as social science domains such as archaeology and traditional Inuit knowledge, there is semantically a lot to account for. Within each of these domains, we also need to ensure that the terms that we're using are current and relevant. In other words, that they're common terms that the communities in question are actually using. So here's an example from the domain of oceanography. These are three different forms of the same concept. Practical salinity of seawater. The first one is from the Amundsen seabird, the second is from the climate and forecasting vocabulary, and the third is from the British Oceanographic Data Center vocabulary. You'll notice that we started off with the seabird, but not everyone uses that, so we also need to take into account different types of instrumentation, the way that date and time are recorded, units of measurement, data that's obtained from different sensors, and the use of different algorithms. Interoperability also extends to metadata. For example, some data centers are using ISO 19115 for their cataloging, others are using DOI, still others have their own custom metadata framework, and finally we have some instances where there's no metadata framework at all because the centers are just now making certain data available. So we've developed a methodology to meet each one of these challenges. First, in order to make sure that we're using the terminology and vocabularies that are currently being used by those that are working in the field, we've aligned with some different groups that both use and make recommendations on them. These include Arctic Data Committee, Holder, and ESIP, for example. In addition to these groups, we're working closely with domain experts for each of our three use cases, including marine biologists, oceanographers, environmental scientists, Inuit-led organizations, data managers, programs, etc. And finally, we're using the semantic web to help us link everything together. So in terms of metadata, we're using schema.org here to crosswalk and translate between the other data center metadata frameworks. And you can see some of that crosswalking here. And over here, this uses OWL and tense RDF triple language or turtle to do that. This is OWL and turtle performing the same function with the data attributes between Amundsen, this is NERC, this is BODC, CF, and CDataNet. And here is the label. Because we're taking an agile approach, this has allowed us to constantly evaluate and reevaluate whether what we're doing is working and should be adopted for production level. At the moment, we found that GitLab and GitHub is useful for issues and certain documentation. Google Sheets has been used for collaborative crosswalking, and RDF, OWL, Turtle, obviously we've been using those, and Protege for ontology, modeling, and export. And the longer-term goal here is to be able to provide a roadmap or a blueprint for others who want to do this kind of work. And that roadmap will eventually take the form of formal documentation, which we'll be happy to share when it becomes available. Thanks.